kind of a massive shift. It's a reframe of the problem that turns us into protagonists, gives us the opportunity to look at this as a positive thing. We have been living in doom and gloom for so long now. And I understand people wanting to cheer on, Greta Thunberg when she says, the planet is on fire and people need to act. I agree. They do need to act. But we need to act from a place of thinking about evolution and of adaptation. We need to look at how nature adapts to changing condition. We need to look at how nature creates cooperative relationships that allow for coevolution. And we need to look at how the planet itself uses a whole system of mutations in order to test out new theories. And we need to realize more than anything for this, that we are universal beings. And when we understand deep down inside that this physical incarnation that I'm in right now is just an emanation of my soul in this particular moment, and that I have a purpose and a mission in this particular moment, and that my soul has an overall mission, and if I stay true to those two, I will do what I need to do happily, with detachment, in order to achieve the next level of my evolution, whether that be in this lifetime or in the next lifetime, whether this be while I'm incarnate or while I'm sitting in my own threshold waiting to incarnate again in the next level. Like the Grail gives us the opportunity, it gives us that extra boost of energy for us to see what is really happening and to interact with what is happening in a whole new way. Business and personal are all mixed in one, right? We shouldn't keep thinking about ourselves as these divided sort of beings. Our community ties, our ability to create something. Going back to my example with John Todd, right? He created this machine in the middle of this town, in the canal, right? This eco machine that cleans the water. Yes, this is John Todd's business, but his business is his life, because his life is about creating safe water for people in harmony with nature. And so John Todd himself evolves every time he creates an eco machine, because he's able to better harmonize with the ecosystems that he has to create. Because of course, being that every place that he places one of these eco machines is different, and the water conditions are different, and what's happening in the overall area is different, each one of these eco machines is a living machine that's made up of lots of little ecosystems that create one large ecosystem. All this kind of way of thinking. And so therefore, his life mission is to create clean water, but really his life mission is about creating communities, creating places for us to really grow and spend time in and be connected to, and have all of this connection to nature as nature fulfills one of its many functions, which is cleaning water. So yes, this is his job. Yes, this is his career, but this is also his life and his life mission. And so I named my group Naturally Conscious Business Community because I really want people to understand that business does not have to be separate from life, and that if you do it consciously, it actually becomes a part of your evolution. And so these are the types of topics that we want to discuss. We want to talk about pollution, whether it be, mental pollution and individual pollution, which is what requires us to think about mindset and really think about the next levels, or whether we're talking about giant planetary pollution, that is what is going to take us to this evolutionary transformation that we have to have. So one of the questions that I'm grappling with right now, and I would love to hear your feedback on, is who really is the host of the Grail, right? If we talked about the Grail as illness, is it the planet that's hosting the Grail for us? Or is it society in general? Is it humanity that as a whole is hosting the Grail? We have lots of different mini versions of the Grail, right? A lot of us host the Grail in different moments, whether you're talking about the cold, right? How can you be, but you might say, how am I hosting the Grail when I have a cold? Well, in reality, sometimes, and I'm sure a lot of you who are, independent and entrepreneurs know this, when you go full steam ahead, you think you're doing a lot, right? You think you're going, you're a little bit stressed out, and then you hit a cold. And what does a cold happen? What happens when you get a cold, right? You get all stuffy and whatever. If you listen to your body, you rest, right? You take that pause. And in that moment of rest, all of a sudden things that you were doing, kind of pushing them, become clear. because you give your mind, you give your body the ability to take the space it needs to think about things differently. So you could even be hosting the Grail in something small as a cold, because my evolutionary transformation right there is that I allowed myself to, the Grail pushed me to give myself space. This is why it's super important that even when you have a cold, for you to take time for yourself, for you to take a breather, for you to rest, because in that moment of rest comes clarity. And in that clarity, you're able to then see the next direction you're supposed to take. And certain problems that might have seemed enormous or catastrophic when you were there. So as humans, we host the Grail all the time. And this is part of our evolutionary transformation. So it's multiple layers that are hosting. Sometimes we're hosting it as an individual. Sometimes our society in and of itself is hosting it with the illness of the way that we think about things, the fears. Fear is a massive form of illness that we are experiencing that could be used for evolutionary growth if we were to reframe it and give it the ability for us to think about it in a completely different way. And also at the level of what's happening around the world. We have a massive illness that's happening where we continue to talk about these problems that are happening in the world while we simultaneously pollute the world through our actions. And so our illness is the fact that our actions and our thoughts are not aligned. And as Gandhi said, right? Gandhi said that happiness is when your thoughts and your, how would he said? When your thoughts, when your ideals or your beliefs, and when your actions are aligned. So it's understandable that we're not experiencing full happiness right now, because happiness can only happen when these three things are aligned. And right now, even those of us that are as strong as advocates as we can for the planet itself to heal the planet are not necessarily always aligned. This is why we talk about the fact that it's extremely important for us to start with our own actions. Because when our own actions are aligned to our thoughts and our ideals, to what's in our hearts, to our emotions, then we feel that happiness that we can use and is contagious to move on to the next thing. So when we look at the planetary illness, of course it starts with the individual, because the individual has to be aligned in order to bring that alignment to the greater society, which then brings that alignment out to a wider circle, and in concentric circles keeps growing and growing and growing. So on the one hand, the planet is hosting the Grail for us and is hosting this illness for us in order to push us to see more mutations, to push more mutations to happen, to push more species to evolve, to push us into the next level of our planetary growth. And we as individuals are also hosting it, or in smaller communities and in bigger societies are hosting it, because the way that we have to do this is to come together to use that clarity and to really use this illness for planetary growth. So we can see this now as an opportunity to test new mutations. This is an opportunity for us to look at people with different abilities, whether those be, psychic abilities or spiritual abilities or physical abilities, or things that we today designate as illness, or we designate as a problem, such as autism, such as, I was born with my limbs in a different way. We try to think of that as always something to correct, but it's not necessarily always something to correct. It could be that there are strengths in there that push for new advancements. Or it even could be that in trying to quote unquote correct this, we push for new technological advancements that allow us to help some other area of problem. So we always want to look at whatever it is that we're doing with that, really kind of connect into it and say, how can I best use this mutation? How can I best use this difference, this ability that has now happened in order to push myself? So I'll use an example of, for example, somebody who's blind, right? We look at somebody who's blind with the idea that, oh my God, you're not experiencing the world the same way I am, and therefore I should correct that. We have to work for ways to make sure that the blind can see. But what if instead we thought about the other senses that the blind have that we ourselves don't have? An enhanced sense of hearing, an enhanced sense of smell. Think about all the things that I don't have right now because I can't hear or I can't smell that way. Now, if I was to look at blindness as an evolutionary trait, as something that allows me to push forward something evolutionary and transform, then the ideal would be that not that I just try to correct, quote unquote, blindness, but that I am simultaneously looking at myself as disabled, as differently abled, and I'm trying to understand from them their enhanced hearing and their enhanced smell so that I can then grow in that kind of hearing and smell. So maybe we will reach a day in the future when we have enhanced vision, enhanced smell, and enhanced hearing, because we didn't look at one of them as a problem and only focused on the problem. We looked at also the opportunities that that difference gave us and the things that we could look at to change within ourselves. Do you see what I'm trying to say? We're not trying to go backwards. I don't want the blind person to become like me so that they can see, but now they have the same hearing and the same smell as I do. That is not an evolution. An evolution is that the person changes, that eventually one day in the future, both of us reach the idea that we have vision as well as enhanced hearing and as well as enhanced smell. Now, when you take that onto a planetary level, we go at things like what I was talking about, John Todd's eco machine, right? Here is a solution of dirty water. We don't want to just clean the water in some way that makes the water run off. By creating an ecosystem there, creating an environment there, the community is able to enhance the way that it is, and therefore transform in an evolutionary way, in a way that that area will never be dirty again. There is a deep connection with nature, and the whole community is now benefiting from what's happening in that place. So no, you don't go back to just a clean canal. You go forward to a new ecosystem that allowed nature and humanity to reconnect and to be living in a co-created space inside of a city.